Okay, it's April 17th, 2014. This is Brent Björkman with the Kentucky Folklife program, and I'm here at Mammoth Cave working on this project for the Archie Green Fellowship Library of Congress called Ranger Lore, looking at the occupational working culture of park rangers. Been working here at Mammoth Cave for a while, talking to a bunch of people that work in various capacities, and I'm here in the fire cache, starting to talk a little bit to some law enforcement folks. And Brian, if you could tell me your name and your current duties.
Brian Sacia. I'm a U.S. Park Ranger here at Mammoth Cave. Also in charge of the field training program here at Mammoth Cave, Big South Fork, and Cumberland Gap.
So I've been asking folks kind of their origin story. Some people have different variations on that. You know, how did you first get involved in thinking about this as a career? Was it an early memory? I think you might have said you had a little bit of a story about that or something else.
Yes, it was fairly early. I grew up in Wisconsin, northern Minnesota area. My parents, big time campers, grew up, going tenting, and then eventually they got a pop-up tent trailer. My sister and I would traveling all over out west, all over Canada, just about every summer. We were gone in that thing, having a large time. So that, as well as growing up on the pretty much the banks of the St. Croix River, which is a Park Service managed land strip anyway. I knew what rangers did. I grew up seeing rangers. I didn't quite understand the law enforcement aspect of it at that point, but I saw the uniform, and of course, the old cartoons with Yogi Bear and all that other things. Put two and two together. About 12, 13 years of age, we went to Glacier National Park on a vacation, and I always tell my trainees and stuff when I would get here, it's that thank God I was too young to know better. Basically, some of those things, because my parents, I don't know, typical touristy, not necessarily doing the right thing all at the same time. We were in our campsite, and the rangers were coming by, making sure everybody was policing up their food scraps. And we had, of course, like good tourists, not paid any attention to any of the rules and regulations and stuff like that. We'd eaten a whole bucket of KFC chicken and threw the chicken bones into the fire ring, which we were going to burn up anyway. However, the grizzly bears, there aren't many of those in Wisconsin. So I remember having basically a light bulb came on, and an epiphany, if you will. It's like, my God, I have to do this for a living. So I tailored my college and
what was your college kind of you tracked yourself?
Yeah, I kind of aligned myself, had that in the back of my mind, graduated in high school, and started looking in how do I become a ranger. When it started at a community college that offered the ranger skills course, or the seasonal academy, along with an associate's degree. Got an associate's degree, got out into the field, and was lucky enough to be hired on right at St. Croix National Scenic Riverway, which is in my backyard, basically. Was an interpreter there for 2 years prior to becoming commissioned law enforcement officer in '96. And worked there seasonally up until 2000. So,
wow. You're coming up on 20 years.
Yeah, 8 more years and I'll have my 20 in. Not because it counts for permanent status. Not all of the seasonal time counts towards retirement. So
what was some of your first experiences getting into law enforcement in the park? I mean, a lot of people that I've interviewed, Mammoth has kind of been that, but some people are more transient and they go.
I started, like I said, seasonal those years up until 2000 at St. Croix National Scenic Riverway, law enforcement from '96, summer seasons, '96 through 2000. 2000, I transferred to Katmai National Park in Alaska as a seasonal, was a backcountry ranger there, and that July I ended up going permanent because I had, in between seasons, I went back for my bachelor's degree at the University of Wisconsin River Falls, and got my bachelor's degree, and as soon as I had that piece of paper, my ticket punched with the experience that I had, I knew that most likely I'd be having a better shot of getting a permanent job within the Park Service, which that summer I did. Right. So I had to make the quick adjustment from backcountry Alaska to permanent at Glen National Recreational area in Utah in July. So, so I was backcountry ranger living out of a tent for 10 days at a time to go into Glen Canyon, which was 115 degrees in the shade right after the 4th of July weekend. So to permanent status. So it was a crazy summer.
Right.
Crazy summer.
Yeah.
Was there from, 2000, most of 2000, 2001, after 9/11, and then, I'm thinking back, and then 2002, and in November of 2002, that winter, I moved to Mammoth Cave.
Okay.
It was kind of a promotion. A lot of the jobs out west in those entry-level positions are subject to furlough. So either though they're permanent, I was getting my benefits, my retirement started and everything else, it was still somewhat of a seasonal job. I would work 9 months out of the year and have 3 months off. So my transition from there to here was full-time, permanent, year-round.
And that's something you were looking for.
Right, I was looking for that anyway. And a lot of the big West parks, you have to live in government quarters because there's not anywhere else to live, or if there is housing available, it's so expensive. So that was one of the big draws, is to trying to I got that whole Western park ranger vibe out of my system, and then I was getting a little bit older, wanting to come back east and try to settle down. So
Right.
Mammoth Cave seemed like the right opportunity at the time, and I've been here since. So I love it.
Yeah.
Love it here.
It's when I explained to you that I was talking to, my initial interviews were been mostly with interpretive people, and I do understand that some people go from there too. But you've really been have you been law enforcement for
Since '96, yeah.
So I mean, you haven't really done any interpretation.
We bleed over a little bit whenever they have something going on over there that like Junior Ranger Day, we'll go do our spiel, but it's still either from a fire or a law enforcement status standpoint, but it's still interpretation, so. Is
your training a lot like does it encompass things like EMT, fire jumping? Can you maybe give me an idea about?
We're kind of, that's one of the reasons why I did also get into rangering, is because it's so diverse. We don't have to do, we're police officers first and foremost, but what comes along with that is the EMT, the search and rescue, the structure firefighting, and we're all of those things. If you call a ranger, especially here at Mammoth Cave, you're getting all of those in one person. So yeah, I'm an EMT. I'm also excuse me, the emergency medical services coordinator here for the park, CPR, first aid instructor, all of those things. So yeah, we wear multiple hats.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think about, this is about working life, and I know from some of the stories from interpretation and the guide force, they have their own folk culture around that particular job,
right?
As they mentor one another, presenting in the cave and that sort of thing. But can you tell me a little bit about your experience with the crew here? Certainly, with those folks, there was I call it hazing, but there's jokes you play on one another and daily, things you feel comfortable about presenting. I don't want to.
Right. Oh, when I first moved here, it was a different dynamic because I was at the time the youngest one here. I was single, didn't have any ties to anything. Literally everything that I owned fit in my truck when I moved here from out west. So now the other guys, including the chief, all the way down to the field staff, were all married, had been in their careers for a while, and most of those had worked here for almost 20 years at the time, and were very established. Great wealths of knowledge to learn from, but as far as an after hours type of thing, or even in the field, the camaraderie and the cutting up and carrying on, it wasn't there. So I had to adjust myself a little bit to that. But now, since there's been a little bit of a turnover, there's some more positions that have been hired. So I'm not the youngest one anymore. I'm back up there. I'm probably the old dog. We've got a couple, 3 others that are also seasonal and permanent as well. But they all have young families, and we all get together and hang out, have fun, even on and off duty. So
sounds like from what you illustrated before, it sounds like you're drawn to this because there is some diversity in what you do. And I wanted to ask a question. I'm thinking about how to frame it. Can you maybe run me through and I'm quoting typical day, and I know you don't have a typical day. Maybe think about it. I don't, maybe a day that you'd really like to have happen and it never does. Or maybe if you want to share with me something about, challenges, rewards, something that made you think, I really made a difference. And I'm sure you feel that way often.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a multi-pronged question.
It is. Pick one.
Yeah, what was the first thing you said there? I'm sorry.
I said, run me through a typical day, but
yeah, you just hit the nail on the head right there. There is no typical day in emergency service work. I mean, there's an old adage, something about 99% boredom, and then 1% sheer terror. Because when my phone could easily, or the radio could easily go off right now, and we have to switch, from talking one-on-one here to emergency services mode, just like that. And that's kind of the way it is, and that's part of the reason why I do it. I like that initial adrenaline jump that we get for it. I'm trained to do it, and I kind of go to robot mode. Then I know what to do, and I don't know. It's hard to explain. So typical day here, kind of consists of looking forward to coming off of days off. Today's my Monday. Looked at the schedule and see who's on duty, what I got, kind of line out what I've got responsibilities to take care of, and just go from there, get all of those things done, and then try to go on patrol, go out and drive around and see what's up. So
yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine who's in the Tennessee State Park system,
Mm-hmm.
Bobby Fulcher, who actually started this Folklorist in the Park project back in the late 70s, early 80s, where we put a folklorist to document park culture and present it back at evening. And he was into his career before he really jumped in and really went through training as law enforcement. And the intensity of his story about how his eyes were opened to what you have to be and what's out there.
yeah,
And you have to really believe in this way of operating, this new way of thinking. Sounds like that's something that you've been going for law enforcement throughout
Right.
the time, but it's very different than a civilian. And could you speak to something like, it just seems like your role is so multifaceted. That's the first word that I think about, but you have to be always on guard, yet you have to be this face.
well,
That's like, I am a friendly ranger.
That
but
is
yet-
one of the drawbacks to being a ranger, as far as law enforcement mindset goes, and since I've been in the field training program, that's some of the issues we do see with it's kind of built into I don't know how to explain it, but when we have some problems with performance in the field from some trainees, that's what they have in their mind. They became a ranger because they get to do all of those things, which isn't necessarily bad. However, you have to do law enforcement very well first, and that becomes hard to do when you're an EMT. We've been here, go to emergency calls. We had a call that I didn't personally go on, however, I know the gist of it. Came in as an emergency call, a woman screaming in the woods, unknown what the issues were. However, turns out she's wanted, and she's coming down off of a very high on methamphetamine. I mean, so they ended up taking her to, into custody and sat with her at the hospital until she came down off of it, and, processed her instead of emergency services, which, yeah, they took care of that part too. However, they made the arrest and followed it up that way. So it can go from one extreme to the other,
Right.
but law enforcement always comes first.
Right.
And I mean, it's the way I tell my cousins, they're real outdoorsy people, and they're all the time in national parks and state parks and stuff. And I've been there too. When you're a civilian, you're kind of oblivious to, okay, I'm in this most beautiful place. I'm seeing all of these really, really interesting natural features, and there's people around me, but some of those people are criminals. So when I'm on patrol, I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing that 1% that need to be looked at for X reason. So whether they're, speeding or doing something far worse. So
How do the visitors in your time here, they react to you differently than with a vest on and with a sidearm?
yeah, a little. Early in my career, I don't think, of course, you're walking around with your chest poked out a little bit, and you try to be seen. And we've just recently transitioned to wearing the external body armor carriers. So I think that does separate us from the interpreters or the other uniformed employees, which I think is a good thing, because there's times where, like, ticket office has a problem with somebody that's had an issue with a ticket going bad, or somebody that's had a little bit too much to drink tries to get on a cave tour, and they're of course trained to monitor for that, and they call us. So they're not, when we show up, they know there's something different, going on. So I think it helps with the authority aspect of it.
Yeah.
So
Does the training continue on? I mean, are there periodic things or new legislation or new mandates?
absolutely, we're constantly learning. We're responsible for doing 40 hours minimum, 40 hours of in-service every year. We just finished that here a week and a half ago, which we host here at the park, and all of us that have been long enough we're instructors on certain things. I'm a firearms instructor and a taser instructor, so I'm responsible for doing those aspects of it. And we've got to do certain minimums, legal update, of course, case laws ever changing, so you have to be up on that, and then the field application of the case law. Of course, everything is all stemmed around the Fourth Amendment. Basically, all law enforcement, that's the golden rule, is the Fourth Amendment. So.
When you go forward, become a taser trainer or something, are those things that supervisors kind of target you for, or is it something that's built into
Somewhat.
you DNA? Like, I really want to progress, and I'm gonna.
Yeah, early on in my career, I was a training junkie. All the training you could send me to, the better. And training is good. However, you get overrun with it, and it's really easy to get bogged down with trying to keep refresher hours. Just my EMT license, I've got to have 48 hours of continuing ed plus a 24-hour refresher every 2 years. So I've got to do that, and I have to maintain that because A, I want to, and B, my job position as the emergency services coordinator, I have to have it. That's the minimum standard. I have to have an EMT license. So I have to keep it, although that's one of the things that I would love to scale back now that I'm in my position in my career. I'd go back to a first responder, which is much easier to keep. However, I can't. So I've got to keep that up. All of the other instructorships, that becomes more responsibility. So yeah, I've learned now that it's better to find 2 or 3 that are really, really important to you, and kind of be good at that. I consider myself a jack of all trades and master of absolutely nothing, but that's not necessarily always a good thing. So it's better to have 2 or 3 things that you can really do well and teach well. So
you're a master. You're a master at 1 or 2.
I wouldn't say master by no means. I'm good at 2 or 3 things.
Right.
So
What are your favorite things, and then maybe not so favorite things about this diverse life in this position?
favorite things, getting to come to work with some of the just awesome people. I've been here long enough now where they're family, and literally are some family here. My wife's family, she's from here, from Kentucky. Met her here at the park, and her whole family, in a lot of different ways, have either still do or have worked here at Mammoth Cave National Park. So, so that's kind of the family aspect of it, the cohesiveness. I really do like that. Just the general camaraderie of it. I absolutely love that. But the not so good things anymore. I've got 2 young boys and a wife at home, and my job requires me to be called out at all hours of the night, depending on what's going on, and nights and weekends, shift work, and then most every weekend I'm at work. When everybody else is off, I'm at work. So, but I kind of like that. It's the same way. Everything's got a 2-prong deal to it. But
So you were saying today it's a Thursday today, and this is your Monday.
Yes, we work 10-hour days currently. That's not across the board nationwide, but here at Mammoth Cave, we've worked it so we can work it out. We work out 10-hour days, and I think that really works nice because I can have 3 days off then during the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, I'm off and watching my kids. So.
And they get used to Daddy doing that.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah. How is this particular assignment? I mean, you've grown in this assignment, so it's hard to make a connection when you were young at Katmai and those sorts of things. But how is this? Is this park different? Than...
Well, all the parks are different. Yeah. As far
Can you
as
tell me a little bit
size,
about each one of the ones you're at?
St. Croix Riverway, of course, that was home. You know, that was just like being home. You know, I was very familiar with all the areas, all the local deputies and stuff that would help us out. So I was, you know, completely comfortable doing a lot of things, and looking back at it, doing a lot of things that I probably shouldn't not have done as far as the safety aspect of it, and things that just make me cringe now that I'm in a teaching role. That just like, oh my gosh, you know, never would we do that. You know, going into these places and dealing with these literally parties of drunk individuals, and by myself with relatively limited experience with no communications. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, why would you do that? You know, but I was young and dumb and definitely have learned from it. So that was the comfort level there. And then of course that was one of the reasons I've got into the Park Service, is the fringe benefit, is I got to travel and see and go and do all these things that people literally save their entire lives for, like Katmai. People, you know, that I'd see fly in there, because there are no roads where those, you either get there by plane or by boat, that it costs thousands of dollars to go there as a visitor, park visitor. I got to live there and work there, you know, so it was really cool. And just the immense size of that place was insane. Yeah. And of course the bears, you know, that's why everybody's there, is the big grizzly bears. And so I got to see that. I grew up seeing that on National Geographic and got to live it. So yeah. That was one of the big reasons I got there. I kicked myself for not going a few seasons early, and because I ended up going permanent that summer, and then had to transfer to Glen Canyon. And Glen Canyon was outside of the comfort zone. So that's a large scale national recreational area where there's rules and regulations. However, it's a rec area. It's not managed as the same as a national park would be, as far as the preservation of resources go. The resource out there is, of course, Lake Powell and the canyon through Glen Canyon, but it's a rec area. It's meant to be used. So you've got, you know, all the multi-million-dollar boats and jet skis and everything running through the river, and the clientele that comes with that, and all of the emergency services, whether it be, you know, from search and rescue to law enforcement to the whole gamut of it out there. And that was, being fairly young in my career, as a first permanent job, it was kind of a sink or swim type of thing. And thank God for a very good district ranger and first line supervisor, and they were the teaching type. And there was 5 of us that were relatively new first permanents hired that summer, and we all swam instead of sank. So I directly attribute that to good supervision. Yeah. And worked my way up into the position I'm in now. So
yeah, that idea of mentorship, I mean, certainly to the ranger, but I mean it's huge. Yeah, because it is a very intimate learning environment, I think.
Yeah.
And like for here, is it the same way here too?
Yes, yeah. And that's, I think, one of the, going back to the being good at certain things, I've kind of found my niche. I think I mentioned earlier that I managed the field training program, which started here at Mammoth Cave and has blossomed into, we've got a partnership between Cumberland Gap and Big South Fork as well. And I lead that program.
What does that mean to be? Tell me a little bit more about that.
The field training program?
Yeah.
When I graduated from the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center at FLETC, The program didn't exist. It was in its infancy, in its planning stages. It was going to be implemented. However, when I graduated, I was basically the old grandfathered in type. Now, when you graduate from FLETC, you're required to do 11 weeks at a field training park. And there's 20 some odd parks throughout the nation that you will be assigned to do your 11 weeks. And you're with 3 different seasoned officers, training officers, basically checking off your skills in the field. Excuse me.
Okay.
So we're here, Mammoth Cave, Big South Fork, Cumberland Gap, our training parks. That's what I was doing this morning. Actually, I was planning for the next batch of students coming out here in June. We get 2 trainees they'll be here all summer.
I started these interviews in December. I was able to do interviews in the archive because the guide lounge was pretty quiet. And now, I'm going to different locations because things are ramping up.
Right.
How does that affect you as a law enforcement person, the ebb and flow of the tourist season?
Yeah, it's starting to get busy. Our case numbers are starting to increase. In the springtime, it's always kind of we run around like chickens with our heads cut off, both in the interp division and in the law enforcement division, because we all have, wintertime is training time, and then springtime is refresher time. Everybody's got to get their refresher hours in. And we kind of cross over that way. I'm a CPR instructor, so that all the new hires and all of their people that are on their research cycle, I've got to train their CPR, and all the new hires will get, we'll sit down with them and do a 3-4 hour presentation on how we want emergency medical services incidents in the cave to go, and they're all cross trained, so they help us out with that. And a new hire first time in the cave and they have an injury, or God forbid somebody having a heart attack in there, they need to know how it's supposed to go. So we'll talk to them about that. And then there's a lot of the other things too that happen at the visitor center, drunks, drugs, it happens. And the more numbers of people that come, the more chances of that happening. Fairly common.
It's the percentages.
Yeah, the percentages go up. So,
do you have any particular things where a rescue story or a close call or a happy ending or both?
Oh yeah, you don't ever seem to remember the happy endings. The one in particular that I did feel, that ended very well. It was a couple springs ago, and it was during one of those icy cold snaps we have here in Kentucky. And the maintenance division had been out making sure the roads were, in the cave entrance roads and stuff, were safe to send the tour buses down. So I think we were had been opened on a delayed basis. And when that happens, when maintenance comes in, a law enforcement officer comes in as well, just to kind of make sure everything is safe and secure before the full-on open. And one of the maintenance guys goes down into Carmichael entrance and hollers at me on the radio, said, there's a vehicle parked down here with a gentleman inside who appears to be sleeping. I'm like, oh crap, that's not good. It's like 9 in. And so I go down there and meet him, and he says, I've roused him up, but he's not all there. Turns out the elderly gentleman had Alzheimer's, and he urinated on himself and defecated on himself. He was a complete mess. I'm like, oh crap, now what am I supposed to do with this guy, I run his his license plate tags. Comes out of Indiana, Fort Wayne, Indiana, and luckily his family members had flagged his car, so it was wanted as a missing persons. So of course, get a hold of Indiana State Police, get some more information. Turns out he's an Alzheimer's patient that hadn't been seen in 2 days. And the family was, completely worried, as anyone would be. Okay, he's fine. We got him. Put him in my car, and of course he's literally a mess. And
literally a mess.
Yeah, he's literally just awful mess. But he's compliant, and I don't have a lot of experience dealing with the Alzheimer's patients. So I'm just like, okay, he's compliant. I'm not going to do anything to disturb this, because my grandfather had a little bit of that, where he would go violent if you suggested anything that didn't sound right to him. So I just sat with him, got him something to eat, kept him warm, and hated for him to have to sit in his own mess that long. But his family members, I knew they were coming down from Fort Wayne, Indiana, which was 3 hours. So they showed up. Everything was as well, and they ended up donating a huge sum of money to the park, which we have a donation account set up for. We can't take any services, any money for our services, but we do have this. If you want to donate, that money is used for training, gear, things like that that aren't ordinarily budgeted for. But since myself and another ranger, we handled that professionally and got closure for the family, got everything ended very well. I forget how much money they donated, but it went a long ways into helping paying for training fees and gear. So that one ended up really well, and it's one of those days that you know what, that made a difference to them. So other than that, it's the bad ones, which we have fatalities. Worked a number of those, body recoveries, drownings, things like that some of those stick with you.
So this is a big chunk of land.
53,000 acres, yeah.
So one of my things, I'm putting two and two together and thinking about law enforcement land and people using it for other things. And do you have to go out and talk about that largest cash crop in?
Oh, yeah.
Is that something that people do, and is that something that you are dispatched to take care of or investigate?
People do it. Every year we'll go on patrols, specifically targeting, marijuana grows within the boundaries of Mammoth Cave National Park. We work very closely with the state police and the county. They all have, and David Alexander can touch on this much more detail than I. But yeah, we're all on the same page as far as going out and looking for it. The state police usually flies it with a spotter and find it. And definitely within the last 5 years, we've had multiple marijuana grows in the park. Mm-hmm.
How do you work with other law enforcement, the variety of law enforcement, state localized, and how are you perceived? And then as comfortable as you, how do you perceive them, and is it a...
We've got a very good working relationship with them. In years past, I don't believe it to be so. And I've seen a difference since I got here and to where we're at now. We train together. We'll have tailgate sessions together. We go to lunch together. We're seen in the community together. A lot of our kids and stuff, we'll play baseball together. So it's just another extension of the family, really. And there are, at 2 a.m, if I get called out on something and I can't get another ranger, guess who's coming? They're coming. So and vice versa. We've helped help them out with things outside of our jurisdiction as well. So, but they're not recognized as rangers. However, we can go outside the boundary. We're recognized as Kentucky peace officers. Yeah. So legally standing, we're all covered.
Yeah.
So.
And you probably need to do that. I hear that, and it's not unique to the Park Service. I don't think. I think in the university, myself too, we want you to do more with less.
Oh yeah, that's common here. We have been doing that. Last summer there was 4 of us. This summer we've got a little bit of a boost in. I don't know if it's a boost in funding, but we've got enough money to pay for seasonal employees. So we're going to have 3 seasonals to help us out with the summer workload, and that's going to be huge, really huge. So I don't have to take the 2 a.m. call. Someone else can do it, maybe. So spread the wealth out a little.
What would you say to somebody who thinks they have an interest on doing something like this? You've certainly had this.
Yeah, I was tracked.
You were kind of tracking yourself because of your interest. If somebody came to you as Brian, the law enforcement guidance counselor, with your vast knowledge over years, what would you try to tell them?
If they truly wanted to do it, if I had to do anything over again and change anything the way I got into it, I would have went in the military right out of high school and used that as a tool to get my head screwed on straight and not wasted a couple of years in college. Wasted meaning and I did get a degree. However, my mind wasn't right. You know, they got that whole party atmosphere done. If I'd have went in the military, I would have got my head screwed on straight and had the GI Bill to pay for my education instead of graduating with, you know, in debt. And, you know, so I would have done that and then had vet status to use towards a government career. If someone came to me, first thing I'm gonna say is you got to really want it. You don't. It's not easy. These jobs are very, very highly competed, you know, for, and especially nowadays with the budgets. And you know, if I was to apply for a job right now for, you know, the next step in my career, I would have to compete with, you know, my colleagues, and it would be, you know, the best man or woman for the job, hopefully. But if there was a vet, if one of those guys or women had veteran status, they would most likely get that job before me. So I don't have that ticket to punch. So I got to fall back on my experience and training and everything else. So that's the key right there, is to work hard at it and kind of be a self-starter. If you're not a self-starter in the government, you're just gonna get passed over. So.
Are your kids interested in?
They're too young.
Yeah, I was gonna. How old are your kids?
They're 5. I got one turning 5 and will be 3 the end of the month. So yeah, they're too young.
If they were interested, though, would
I would support it. Yeah, I would. I don't know about the law enforcement aspect of it though. Look, my mom, she to this day worries. I know she does, and I've been out of the house since I was 17 years old. So she, of course, and then you add a firefighting career detail into that for 2 weeks, and you know, and she, for some reasons, thinks that's way more dangerous than law enforcement is. But like, man, that fire is a vacation from law enforcement.
Yeah.
So I think she has a little bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah.
With what I actually do. Either that or she's in complete denial as to what a police officer does.
Our parents never understand exactly what we do. It's a
Yeah.
different world than they're in. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to share about this? I mean, it's such an interesting job, and you know, your feelings about any of this.
Man, I don't know. I don't know. I just absolutely love my job. I love coming to work every day, and if I didn't, I'd definitely find something else to do.
Yeah. Do you live near here?
Yeah, I live here just outside the park. Yep.
That's right. Well, Brian, thanks for your time.
No problem.
Fellow Upper Midwesterner.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.